Ramoncito, the boy who lived in a tree. Ramoncito's life. At 7 years old, Ramoncito was a highly active child, and he liked to help his parents maintain the small garden that gave them a few fruits and vegetables, and he was also beginning to learn to tap the old cow that still gave them milk. In addition, his parents owned some chickens that gave them a few eggs every day. The house in which he and his two brothers lived was very small, but they all felt lucky because their few possessions were enough for them to live as a family of 5 people, including mom and dad. Also, in a way that he could not explain, he noticed that they were already lacking food and sustenance, sometimes eating well one day and bad the other day, despite having little chickens, a small garden that still produced vegetables and fruits, and a cow. One day, when he returned early to his little house, he heard the trembling voices of his father and mother, who were talking hurriedly inside, saying that they could no longer endure the extortion and threats of the thugs who controlled a small town that was near their house and who took eggs and milk and fruit and vegetables from them day after day, as not to kill them and their family. And his dad and mom declared that they were no longer willing to endure their extortion and threats, to even steal their children if they did not give them even more of the little they produce. They had decided to leave their little house, their little garden, their cow and their chickens, and hurriedly escape as soon as their children were back to their little house, to never return and start again far from there. Ramoncito, upon hearing the bad news and without his parents seeing him, decided to go to look for his two brothers to bring them back home. Ramoncito's hell. Not finding any of his two brothers where he had looked for them, Ramoncito decided to rush back to the little house where he lived. Shortly after, he saw very clearly that from where his little house should be, a column of black smoke was rising in the air, and his little heart skipped a beat when he saw at a distance that it was from his little house where the column of black smoke was rising. Without thinking much, he ran with all his strength until he found himself in front of the smoking rubble of what was his house, and scattered there and here and there among the smoke, and just outside what was left of his home, which was still burning, he could see 4 bodies lying in the ground, inert and lifeless. They were his dad, his mom, and his 2 little brothers, who had been victims of threats from extortionists who were constantly watching them, and who, upon realizing that their source of income, Ramoncito's family, was going to escape, decided to kill them. He sat on the floor crying uncontrollably, repeating the names of his dad, mom, and 2 brothers, and not long afterward he heard voices approaching where he was. Overrun with fear, he got up without hesitation and ran away from the place. The emotional exhaustion of the tragedy experienced that day took his toll on Ramoncito's humanity, and he found refuge in a little tree friend. So, after running aimlessly in a small ravine, fainted and lost consciousness. When he woke up, it was already night, and he found himself under a very leafy tree that completely hid Ramoncitos from being seen by anyone. As best he could, he climbed up to one of its branches to spend the night there, and for his good fortune, he was still carrying the backpack in which his mother had prepared for him a small lunch and a coat for the cold of the morning when he was going to help with the work in the field. So he spent 3 days helped by the little tree friend, sleeping up on the tree branch, after which he began to feel very hungry because he'd made his lunch last as long as he could, but it was not enough. And since he knew his surroundings, he drank water from the nearby river, and from time to time he found some wild fruits. He did not know what to do anymore, and his eyes filled with tears from the memory of what had happened and from the fear that filled his heart. He had to do something if he wanted to survive. Heading to the small town, Ramoncito was a child, more mature than children his age, even though he was only 8 years old. And he soon realized that his only chance of surviving was to go to live in the town where his father went almost daily, which was 10 kilometers away from where he was. He had in his favor the fact that except for a few friends of one of his brothers, no one in the town knew who he was or could recognize him. He decided that he would work as an errand boy for whoever needed him. As long as he could make enough daily money, he could buy what he needed to get by, and with luck over time he would be able to gather enough to buy a ticket on one of the bus lines that came to town and go to another place. He also knew from his brother, who attended school there, that there was a place in the town where they housed people in need, and he could spend the nights there while living in the small town. The boy of the little cart. Ramoncito's first week in the town was very difficult for his new occupation as an errand boy because no one knew him, and he spent the entire days only with the food in his stomach that he was given for breakfast at the shelter for people in need. Fortunately, during his second week in the little town, and when he was about to faint due to the hunger he constantly felt, he managed to get those who ran the shelter to entrust him with a few errands, and with his new and incipient income that he received from them, he dedicated himself to buy food to complement and strengthen his lean daily diet. Little by little, as time went by, his income increased because it became known that he ran errands for the shelter, and other businesses in town also entrusted him with daily errands, and shortly, to his immense joy, he was able to buy a small cart that increased his capacity to carry more things for his errands and thus further increase his income as an errand boy. However, over time he began to notice that some of the people who lived with him in the shelter, especially young women and children, disappeared from it, and nothing was heard from them again. He would notice armed and fuming men entering the hostel without asking permission from the doorman who guarded the entrance and who was afraid of them. With this knowledge, he concluded that the inexplicable disappearances of some people from the shelter where he was sleeping were due to those violent individuals who were surely related in some way to the extortionists who had killed his family. Faced with this realization, this was the last day he slept in the shelter, and he never went near it again. Now the only question that tormented him was where he would spend his nights and where he would sleep in the town, being unseen and safe. The lady of the blue shawl, Ramoncito, finally found a small deserted street in which one of their houses at the back had a service door that did not seem to be used much, and that it had a little roof that could protect him if it rained, and in addition had low walls on both sides of its access. It was the perfect place. Ramoncito decided to curl up on his stroller to avoid sleeping on the bare floor, and once he curled up inside as best he could, he closed his eyes and tried to sleep. It was cold and windy, and the night was already fallen that day. He felt very cold during the night, but strangely the cold decreased as the night progressed until dawn, and thus he managed to fall asleep. With the first rays of the sun, and as he moved to get out of the little cart, Ramoncito noticed that someone had put a small blanket on him to help him sleep warmly. He immediately saw a middle-aged woman wearing a blue shawl who was leaning against one of the walls of the small shed door, gathering up her blankets and rolling up her mat because she had slept next to him, and who was looking at him with affection. Ramoncito did not feel any fear before her presence, and in return he felt a lot of relief at having her next to him. He did not know it then, but heaven had sent him a guardian angel to protect him. Family meeting. Clara, the lady in the blue shawl, also lived outdoors, and she was an excellent sewer, and she supported herself by knitting various family garments for several ladies and even for some businesses in town. As a significant coincidence, she had also discovered the same corner that Ramoncito found to spend the night and had slept there for a long time before Ramoncito came. Soon Ramoncito and Clara formed a solid friendship based on affection and mutual respect, and Ramoncito seemed to put away for a time the melancholy that accompanied him constantly due to the enormous loss of his family, having found in Clara a friend and loving protector. Ramoncito also began to realize that there were other people in need, even more than himself, who lived in the open, especially old men and women who no one cared about anymore, and it broke his heart to see their sad and disconsolate eyes. It was then that he decided to help them in whatever way he could, and since he already had more errands to do, he began to bring them gifts of food and the odd piece of clothing or blanket that Clara, who was extremely proud of Ramoncito's help, work knitted for them with a lot of love. Helping others helped Ramoncito forget about his tragedy. Another event that did not go unnoticed by Ramoncito and also by Clara was the fact that since they had begun to help other people who, like them, lived outdoors, they significantly increased their own income due to an ever-increasing number of clients who requested their services. One night, after hugging Clara affectionately, Ramoncito settled down to sleep on his stroller, as he always did, and very happy he let himself be affectionately tucked in by the lady in the blue shawl with his favorite brown blanket. Ramoncito slept and dreamed that he left his blanket aside, that it was no longer brown but white and very bright, and that he had already gotten up, but he did not see Clara next to him. Next, he began to climb a luminous staircase, and when he finished climbing it, a beautiful light surrounded him, and many small stars guided him to a wide open door through which he entered, because he thought he could see 4 figures in the distance. They shone with a light that projected immense love towards him, and attracted by this beautiful feeling, he approached them until he was at their side. They surrounded him in a circle with their arms open to hug him, all at the same time, and he could recognize them immediately. They were Mom, Dad, and his 2 brothers. Ramoncito and his family spent a long time united in a loving embrace, and when they separated, he realized that he was already just like them, bright and luminous. Mama told him that they would never be separated again. And that a very beautiful lady with a blue mantle filled with stars had received them and had promised to protect them forever, and to take them to her divine Son Jesus as soon as they were renewed all together, so that he could bless them and lay his hands on them. His dad told Ramoncito that our dear Father God had been very happy at the news that he would soon come to join them forever, and had promised to take them all to the Garden of Eden. Ramoncito, in his childish innocence, asked his father if there were little trees in the Garden of Eden, and when his earthly father was going to answer him, the divine, powerful, and loving voice of our good Father in heaven was heard answering him, "My little son, come with me and be blessed always for your purity, your innocence, and the goodness of your heart, and because you have been fair and loyal, I will take you to the tree of life, which is my Son Jesus Christ, and you will be able to climb into his open arms, and he will lay his hands upon you and your mom, dad, and your 2 little brothers, and give you eternal life in his company. Our good Father added, I am a righteous Father, and all the wicked who have followed Satan on earth, sowing darkness and pain to any of my righteous descendants, will not remain unpunished and will be destroyed by fire, being reduced to ashes along with the devil, and it will be as if they had never existed. In his joy at receiving Ramoncito and seeing his family already reunited, our Father, who is in heaven, increased the luminosity of everything that surrounded them in paradise, and with a loving gesture showed them the way to the heavenly banquet that awaiting them, telling them, come, blessed family, the valley of tears is behind you, and the exile is over for you. Here is the table that I have prepared for you with my Son Jesus Christ in the Garden of Eden that is already waiting for you to bless you, next to his beautiful Mother Mary, the full of grace, who always accompanies him. Eat and rejoice.